Yeah.
Okay.
And we are rolling on November 3rd here at UCLA, where we're debating the question, this House would limit gun magazines to 10. This House would limit gun magazines to 10. And to tell us why we should limit gun magazines to 10 will be Monique.
Okay, I'm Monique.
Hi, Monique.
The topic is this House will limit gun magazines to 10. This proposition is to be presented as a policy case in the affirmative. I'm only going to define a magazine, which is a supply chamber or holder in or on a gun for cartridges to be fed into the gun chamber. So what is the problem? The problem is that these large capacity magazines are a common thread uniting all of the high-profile mass shootings in America, and restricting them will lessen the power of killers to kill in such a fashion. Just to name a few, in 2012, James Holmes, armed with firearms that included an assault rifle equipped with a 100-round magazine, opened fire at the Century Aurora movie theater, killing 12 and wounding 58. In arguably the most horrific shooting in United States history, 20-year-old Adam Lanza fatally shot 20 children, ranging from the ages 6 to 7, as well as 6 adult staff members at Sandy Hook. In the most recent and deadliest mass shooting in American history, the shooter, Omar Mateen, was an assault weapon owner. He was the owner of a freshly purchased assault rifle. It was a simple part of the weapon, the large capacity magazine, that allowed Mateen to fire all those bullets so quickly. If he had to pause to change the magazine, there would have been a brief opportunity for victims to flee unharmed. In that Florida nightclub, there could have been fewer than 49 dead and 53 injured. So how big is the problem? The United States has the highest rate of mass shootings. According to a 2015 study by Adam Langford, a professor from the University of Alabama, in which he collected information on mass shootings from law enforcement reports, scholarly articles, and news reports. The United States represents less than 5% of the global population, but accounts for 31% of global mass shootings, which is more than any other country. In this study, mass shootings were defined as having 4 or more victims, and don't include gang killings or slayings that involve multiple deaths of family members. The 90 killers who carried out these mass shootings amounted to 5 times as many as the next highest country, which was the Philippines. According to the Pew Research Center in 2016, the United States has more guns than any other country in the world. There are an estimated 210 to 310 million firearms in the United States, with the American population at 319 million. That breaks down to nearly 1 firearm for every American. The country with the next highest number of guns is India, with 46 million guns, and their population is much larger, 2.25 billion, and India does not even crack the top 5 of countries with the highest mass shootings. So why do we have the problem? One of them is because due to America's high rate of gun violence. The Guardian did a study in 2015, and they showed that no other developed country in the world has anywhere near the same rate of gun violence as America. We have 6 times the gun violence as Canada and nearly 6 times as Germany. The Pew Research Center study I just mentioned also showed a strong correlation between gun ownership and gun violence, and many researchers argue that this correlation is at least partially causal. Also, these guns are concentrated among a passionate minority, and these are often the ones who scare legislators into voting against measures such as this one. The single most powerful organization when it comes to guns is the NRA. They have enormous stranglehold over conservative politics in America, and any time anyone attempts to impose these new forms of gun control, the NRA rallies its supporters to kill these bills. So what is the solution? A federal law limiting gun magazines to 10. Such a law would prohibit any person from possessing, manufacturing, importing, keeping for sale, giving, lending, buying, or receiving any large capacity magazines. Those who already have large capacity magazines would be required to destroy or transfer the magazine to an authorized dealer or law enforcement. Will the solution work? The solution will work. Polling consistently shows that a strong majority of Americans support banning these large capacity magazines. A poll conducted by Johns Hopkins School of Health in 2015 found that 60% of Americans favor banning these large capacity magazines. In 1994, there was a ban on assault weapons, which lasted for 10 years. A Washington study Post analyzed data kept by the Virginia State Police and found that there was a clear decline in the percentage of guns that were equipped with large capacity magazines during that 10-year period. The percentage reached a low of 10% in 2004 and then steadily climbed after Congress expired the ban, and in 2010 the percentage was back up to 22%. Other developed countries have also had large success with similar laws. For example, in Australia, in 1986, after a mass shooting, they imposed laws similar to this, and their murder rate has dropped to 42%, and there hasn't been any more mass shootings. So one advantage of this proposal is that the time taken to reload a magazine could potentially save lives. One example, U.S. House of Representatives Gabrielle Giffords and 18 others were shot during a constituent meeting being held in a supermarket parking lot in Tucson, Arizona. 6 people died, including a 9-year-old girl, Christina Green.
Hold it down a little so we can see your face.
The shooter used a Glock 19mm gun with an extended magazine to carry out these shootings. Patricia Meisch, who was waiting in line to take a photo with the Giffords, hit the ground as soon as she heard the gunshots. At the same time as she hit the ground, someone next to her advised her to get the magazine. She grabbed the second magazine as the shooter was attempting to reload his gun, and then the shooter was tackled down before he was able to take more lives. Also in a statement from Nicole Hockley, whose 6-year-old son Dylan was killed in Sandy Hook shooting, quote, "Our shooter brought 10 30-round magazines, 300 bullets, 300 rounds, fired off 154 of them in less than 4 minutes. But 11 kids were able to escape from my son's classroom when he stopped to reload and had an issue. My son wasn't so lucky. He was shot 5 times. But 11 kids survived purely because he had the time to change the magazine." So on balances, which outweighs? The advantages outweigh. A ban on high-capacity magazines would not stop shootings in America, but it would make these horrible incidents less lethal and save lives. 20 dead children in Newtown, Connecticut was not a wake-up call that we need to do something, and I don't know what is. I now stand open for cross-examination.
Thank you. Stay in the camera view. Thank you. Good. A little more that way. Yeah, good.
Okay. All right. So there are many assault weapon bans already in place in America, but there's also many people with assault rifles already, even with the bans already in place. How do you plan on stopping? How does your policy plan on stopping? Like, how is that any different from gun magazines? How will that prevent black market trade of gun magazines?
Stare at me. I'm the guy you're persuading.
Well, if people were to follow the law, then ideally, like I said, if they have these high-capacity magazines, they would be required to destroy it or return it in to law enforcement. Obviously, that's not going to happen with everybody with any law. There's going to be people who don't follow it. There's going to be a black market. Things like everything there's a black market for. And I think that that's always going to be there. So with any law, we don't enact it with the hope that it's going to get rid of the problem completely. Well, that is the hope, but that's not reality. So the same is true with this law. It's not going to get rid of the problem completely, but it will help.
I have another question.
Mm-hmm.
How did your plan work to convince liberals who think that gun magazine bans are too light and conservatives who think that gun magazines are too extreme?
Well, for liberals who think that is too weak, I guess I would say, obviously with the government that we have right now, it's difficult to get any legislation passed, so this is like a small step in the right direction. There's obviously a lot more that needs to be done, but take what you can get, I guess.
My last question is there any direct causal proof in America that imposing stricter gun regulations will actually limit violence that happens in America?
Well, like I said, there was an assault ban in 1994 to 2004, and there is some evidence that it did help during that time. And recently, states have started, I think 8 states have imposed gun magazine laws, and It's too early to tell whether or not it'll really help. I feel like this country is kind of, they really want, it's hard to pass gun legislation, so it's hard to tell whether or not it'll be effective because we haven't really
Stay in
had
the power stance.
Oh, we haven't really had that much to go off of, so, yeah.
That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair will now recognize the leader of the opposition for his opening speech not to exceed 7 minutes in length.
So, my name is Josh, and I will be arguing from the negative view of this House should limit gun magazines to 10. And honestly, what's the problem? The problem is violence in America. There's a common belief that we both share that violence is too high in America. But her belief is that we can reduce violence in America by limiting magazine rounds to 10. All right. And this is a response to violence. Policymakers have shown. The Wall Street Journal in 2013 published an article relating to Obama enforcing, right after the Sandy Hook shooting, bans on gun magazines and assault rifle bans. So there is, like, that's why they want to limit gun magazines. It's to violence. That's the connection. Violence would be less if gun magazines were also limited. All right. But honestly, that's not really the case. I hate to use the old argument that guns don't kill people, people kill people, but it's true. If you really want to commit a mass killing, if you really want to get an assault rifle and just kill a bunch of people, or if you just want to kill a large crowd in America, that's going to happen regardless of magazine bans or not. In 2001, the anthrax killings, where 7 letters were mailed out to bureaucrats, and these anthrax-laced letters killed 5 of the bureaucrats. No guns were used. In the bombings in the Boston Marathon, they used pressure cookers filled with nails and pieces of scrap metal to kill 3 people at the Boston Marathon, in hopes of injuring more. No guns were used. And the biggest loss of life in America, 9/11, not a single shot was fired, and 3,000 people died. Yeah. Furthermore, limiting gun magazines is an encroachment on our Second Amendment right. And by allowing limitations on gun magazines to slowly encroach on our rights, what's to stop the government saying they can't encroach on other rights? So recently, Reason Magazine published a case study of Colorado. And the case study focused on the recent gun limitation magazine bans in Colorado. They limited gun magazines to 10 after the Aurora massacre. But recently what happened out of this is a federal lawsuit against the state of Colorado claiming that these bans were unfair. Colorado claimed that the reason they enforced these bans was to protect police and to protect them against crime. The people who filed the lawsuit were 55 Colorado sheriffs who believed that this was way too much. So the own people who the laws are sent to protect are saying even these laws are too restrictive on our Second Amendment right. The problem's really big. I'm not gonna lie. There's lots of gun violence in the United States. I think there's 372 mass shootings in the United States, 64 school shootings, and like almost 14,000 people were killed in 2015 due to firearm-related violence. But these numbers are incredibly skewed. According to an article in U.S. Politics, published in 2015, the fact that the claims that there are 374 mass shootings per year would mean there's 1 mass shooting per day, which is really unlikely. I mean, you would hear about that if that were to happen. Also, these laws that Obama is passing are already intruding on our rights. He passed laws, 23 federal acts that already encroach other territory. One of them says that he plans to improve and incentivize background checks to the system in accordance with gun purchases. Okay, these are 2 totally different related issues that he's trying to interact. The other one is that clarifying the Affordable Care Act would not prevent doctors asking their patients about guns. Okay, why is he even talking about affordable care? How is it even relevant to preventing violence in America? Let's look at my last case study that I want to prove. Mexico has really, really high gun violence, higher than America. Mexico has one gun store in Mexico and incredibly strict regulations when it comes to purchasing a gun. All right? Sweden, almost every man of age owns a gun and knows how to use it due to Swedish military training. Only 274 deaths in the year 2014. Okay? So, why is it that America, who should impose strict gun policies, when Mexico itself has done it to an extreme level, but it's not preventing gun violence? It's not. And in Sweden, everybody owns a gun, and they're not killing each other. There's an underlying factor to this, and that's what my policy implications will talk about. We had this problem because crime, violence is human nature. It's human nature. And honestly, these policymakers, these bureaucrats, they don't know about violence. They've never experienced it. They're in their offices. They don't really know. Who we should focus about problem solving in crime are the criminologists whose job it is to analyze crime and they see why violence occurs. Why does violence occur in America? Why are people dying, mass killings? Why is all this happening? Because one of the famous criminologists, Merton, said that violence in America is due to strain, due to emphasis in economical institutions and a de-emphasis in communal institutions. Pretty much, the American dream is what's causing this violence. Not all people have access to the American dream, but they want the same goals, and this leads to violence amongst large groups. All right. First, let's start by my policy would focus more on improving society's strain to reduce crime rather than actually physically limit magazine size or any other encroachment of our rights. It would deal with a crime through strain theory. It would deal with the sick society as a whole, instead of just trying to find straightforward bans on guns, encroaching on our rights. It would try to fix society as a whole, prevent violence before it happens, by emphasizing a goal of the lower class, equal opportunities to all, and organizing Head Start program. This will decrease violence in America as a whole.
Thank you very much. I now stand open for cross-examination.
I now stand open for cross-examination.
So get within camera range, please.
Okay, so your proposal...
Move over that way a little bit, please. You move over that way. Good. Okay.
Okay. So I do agree with your proposal in that it could prevent violence, but I think that is more of a long-term solution. It'll prevent violence in the long term. So how do you propose we could prevent all this violence, especially the mass shootings, now?
Well, right now, even if you were to pass these laws, it would take some time for them to act. But I would think just the fact that you're emphasizing societies, more communal societies instead of individualism will show that it would take some time to act. Not really, because these effects would be immediately picked up on by the community, and immediately I would think this has an immediate effect on the community instead of over time.
Okay. And so you mentioned that this is an infringement on our Second Amendment rights. There has been other amendments to the Constitution, as time has gone. So do you think that what do you feel like is more important, our Second Amendment right to bear arms, or the lives that are being taken and the large amount of violence that's happening?
I think that our Second Amendment rights, even by this gun magazine law, they're not going to be violated, but they are getting encroached upon. What can the government encroach upon without our decisions? I do think that the mass loss of life is important. My policy will prevent mass loss of life without having to restrict guns, which is a win-win on both sides, if I would say so. But yeah, I definitely agree that mass loss of life isn't important. It's really bad. But at the same time, if somebody wants to commit a mass killing, they don't have to use a gun to do so. It won't prevent nationwide violence in America. by limiting magazine size. I'm looking at the big picture of the future.
You mentioned that this violence is going to happen whether or not this law is
Power
in place.
stands.
Whether or not this law is in place, so why not give it a try? Why not see if it'll work?
Well, you could see that if it could try, but if it won't, you're going to be costing money for gun companies, which would increase economic constraints on our economy. These economic constraints could lead to more strain in the overall of America, and it could just actually produce more crime if it increases strain, like in America, yeah, and it would cost more money probably to implement those policies over my easier policies that America could implement.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. It's now time for refutation, in which there are 4 steps. You go first. He said, I disagree because therefore. You stay seated while she refutes. And by the way, this is done on an individual argument basis, not on an overall large basis. You understand that,
Yes.
right? Great. Thank you.
Meaning like on something that he spent specifically.
Right,
Okay,
right.
yeah.
Not just one time, but numerous times you do the 4 steps.
Yeah.
Yeah. I meant to say that to Laura.
Good. Okay. So he said that in his cross-examination about how criminals are going to get these guns anyways. So what's the point? I disagree because actually in the worst mass murders that have happened, killers only used whatever they could acquire legally and easily. For example, the Sandy Hook shooter actually took guns from his mother in their own home. The Aurora and Tucson shooter shopped online and in regular sporting stores. A shooter in Norway killed 69 people, and he actually got the guns. He ordered them from the United States because in his country they're not. They're banned. So also, it's also often the case that these murders that commit these mass shootings aren't these mass criminals. They don't get these guns on the black market. They use whatever is legal and easiest to get. So why we don't have automatic machine guns or automatic weapons like the military uses, and why is that? That's because they're banned. So if we ban the sale or transfer of these high-capacity magazines, then we may further down the road, people will have less access to these devices. I think also he mentioned, therefore a policy that limits gun magazines to 12 should be enacted.
Good.
They say, he says, that this will encroach on our Second Amendment rights. I disagree because the Supreme Court has already affirmed the principle of gun ownership with reasonable regulations. Banning high-capacity magazines can save American lives without infringing on anyone's constitutional rights. Take, for example, the case of Omar Mateen. Based on this Second Amendment gun lobby logic, denying him that huge magazine would have denied this killer his Second Amendment rights. If you think about it, Omar Mateen was a law-abiding citizen until he wasn't anymore, until he got his hands on this large weapon that allowed him to kill so many people. So although we can't control the minds of these lunatics who do these mass shootings, we can try to control the weapons that they use. Again, it's not a perfect policy, but if it can limit, if it can save one life, it can save a few lives in these mass shootings, then I think it's worth it. Also, Justice Antonin Scalia, he said, "The right secured by the Second Amendment is not unlimited. The right was not a right to keep and carry any weapon whatsoever, in any manner whatsoever, for whatever purpose," end quote. So there's no constitutional right that we can carry around these large military-style weapons, and courts have ruled that as well. So therefore, limiting these large capacity magazines does not infringe on our Second Amendment rights. And that's
You have 30 seconds.
okay. So therefore, we should enact a law that will limit gun magazines to 10. That's all.
Thank you very much.
Alright, so she says that restricting gun magazines will limit mass killings. But I disagree, because mass killings have occurred in America in the past in larger quantities than any of the mass killings she mentioned, aka 9/11, without a single shot being fired. Therefore, that's why I think limiting gun magazines, it would be like, it's untrue. It wouldn't prevent mass killings. Another thing she said was that higher restrictions and higher policy focusing on gun restrictions, by limiting the weapons that these psychos have, would reduce mass killings. But Mexico, as I given the point before, has some of the strictest gun policies in the world, but a higher firearm death rate than America. So it's untrue. Therefore, this is untrue that a limitation and focus on gun policy will decrease firearm deaths, because Mexico's a perfect example of this. Another thing she said was the Sandy Hook killing that happened. Yeah, it's true that these psychos do have access to large magazine size and assault rifles and all this other stuff that makes it easier for them to kill people. But the big thing about mass killings that nobody really knows about, that nobody focuses on, is that all these mass killings are preemptive. They've thought about this. They know how they want to kill a bunch of people. They know. They're prepared. They come with multiple magazines. Like, even if we limit magazine size to 10, what's to stop them from bringing 30 10-round magazines and just instantly reloading them? They prepared for this. What's to stop them from bringing explosives, knives, other things to commit their mass killings? That's why I don't think that even if these laws get enacted, it's not going to prevent mass killings. Once you're committed to kill a mass number of people, once you're committed to commit an act that causes a large loss of life, you're going to go through with it. And you're going to do it by any means necessary. Yeah, therefore, that's why I think even if these laws are enacted, it won't prevent mass killings. Another thing that she mentioned is about our Second Amendment rights. Like, what is encroaching? Like, the Constitution says that, the Second Amendment says, that we have the right to bear arms and form a stable militia. All right? So, what? Like, we should be allowed, by constitutional rights, we should be allowed to possess the same guns that our military does, and to prevent military uprising. So if you do limit gun magazine sizes of 10, all right, and these psychos get high caliber weapons and still keep committing mass weapons, and you're gonna have the rest of the innocent people be limited with a gun around the size of 10 against people who still have high caliber assault weapons against them? I mean, it seems counterintuitive. Like, you're limiting protection in a way of not only our own safety, but the rights that we are given to protect ourselves by the Constitution. Therefore, I do think that if these laws if these laws are passed, they are they're not violating our total Second Amendment right, because we can still have guns, but they are slowly encroaching on it. And who's to say that this encroachment won't lead to other right encroachments, such as First Amendment or other constitutional rights in the future?
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, judges, time for you to now carefully consider, look over your notes, think about your decision. Do you want to limit gun magazines to 10? You vote affirmative. If you don't, if you have a reasonable doubt about the efficacy of that, you vote negative.
feedback on here, so I'm going to read it back.
Okay, great. You want to go collect them again?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
you could pass them down to your
You're
right.
Yours filled out?
Yeah.
You took it all right? Great. Thank you.
Select this back. Want me to go?
Who is killer or killer? Who is to find out they didn't put a decision?
Kelsey?
Who is killer or killer?
Is it in black ink?
Yeah, is that you?
No, that's Kelsey. She put 1, so I'm assuming. Oh, okay, so she votes half.
Half. Thank you. Okay, good.
And then this one is half as well.
It's haunted. This time, the decision was 11-6 for the affirmative. And this time we will start in the front. Sir,
I voted in the
name?
Pierre.
Hi, Pierre.
I voted in the affirmative because I thought there was more evidence to support the claim. I thought it was more concise. I thought the negative was great in terms of making abstract, relating abstract ideas to the policy, but he never really grounded them, and so it wasn't as convincing.
Great, thank you, Pierre. Jared?
Hi, my name's Jared. I'm going to start with Monique. So, first of all, you had an astounding number of warrants, and I like that. And they were all good examples, and you provided good analysis on them. Obtaining a gun legally, rebuttal is good. I like that. Because
Don't block your face with your legal pad.
the argument that people who commit these mass crimes are generally using legal means to get them, and then you had a bunch of warrants that you had already stated to provide that. So I like that. I would say look up, don't just read from your paper the whole time. It's especially when we're trying to connect as judges with the speaker, it's a lot less persuasive if we can't see your face. And then these regulations are not unconstitutional. I liked that point because Josh was making the argument a lot that, look, it's violating our rights. But he didn't provide a lot of context until the very end what that actually means, and he kind of went back on that, so thanks for that. And then you quoted Scalia against him, which I thought was excellent. And I would have liked to see a Mexico rebuttal, because he kept giving this example of Mexico, but he didn't really explain that much about it. He just said they have strict guns and they have a lot of crime. And I feel like you were in a position to like that. Josh, so I really liked your point on that collective thought over individual thought is a good thing. Like, that's something unique I haven't heard in a gun debate really ever before. So thank you a lot for bringing that. Spices it up a little bit. Boston bomber and 9/11, bad examples of mass crimes. Those are terrorist attacks. They're distinctively different, and I think she brings up a good point when she says mass shootings of people who are citizens not trying to attack the nation are generally done by illegal means. Mexico. So I like that you brought up an example of where doesn't work, but tell me why it doesn't work. Give me more specifics so I can give you that argument, and so she doesn't have an easy time rebutting it. But she didn't really rebut it, so it stood. Preemptive argument is good, but requires more warrants. And she had warrants against it at the beginning. And then lastly is, so you kept on saying that it was encroaching, and I like that, but you never followed it up, because a lot of arguments that are made is like, look, it's encroaching because the whole point of the Second Amendment is to rebel against government, but you never said that. And if you would have said that, then I would have known what you're headed to, why it is encroaching. But also, just a general comment for both of you, you both kind of brought up some things about the Supreme Court. So when you do those things, make sure you're like actually quoting which cases say what, because especially with gun rights, when you have Miller in like 1938 and Heller in 2008, which have two different precedents and neither one actually overrode the other one, it's really important to know who you're quoting and the context in which you're quoting. But other than that, good debate, guys.
Thank you, Jared.
Hi, my name is Joe.
Hi, Joe.
Hello, Professor Miller. So I ended up voting in the affirmative. So I'll first give some feedback to Monique, and then Josh, I'll get to you. So Monique, I would have liked it a lot more if, like Jared said, you would have looked up more connected with the audience. I thought your information was really good. Even though you were reading off of the paper, I still thought that like you seemed fairly passionate and like you knew the material that you were talking about rather than just reading off a paper. I thought that the examples in which large capacity magazines were used to kill lots of people were like pretty salient. And I liked your analysis on like why this problem exists, NRA, lobbying, things like that. What I really liked and what I hope to see more of that Monique did is how she talked about like why her solution would work, and literally talked about like not just, if we limit it to 10-round magazines, we're going to save lives, but talking about why that means that it's going to take people longer to reload, which means that people will have longer to escape, which means that lives will be saved in that process.
We call that issue solvency, and we like you to spend time on it and evidence it, document it, prove it.
And so I thought your rebuttal was good on like, because the common argument in any gun debate are like, well, criminals are going to get it anyway. And you're like, yeah, well, like, maybe some will, but some people will be stopped because they like to use what's easy and convenient. I thought you had good rebuttal to, like, his Second Amendment encroachment argument. So overall, like, that's why I voted for the affirmative. Josh, I thought that, like, your presentation was really good, right? Like, you weren't really reading off of your paper. You were like, hey, like, think about this. Like, what about this example? What about we won't be able to fight back against our government? We're kind of disarming ourselves. One of the things I would say, though, is that a lot of your arguments didn't really link, right? Like, it's almost like listening to your arguments, I would have thought that Monique was talking about, like, banning guns or, like, banning assault weapons, and she was just talking about limiting high-capacity magazines. So that's where it's like it kind of delinks a little bit out of, like, you're limiting the Second Amendment, right? Because it's not limiting the right to bear arms, just the amount of damage that those arms can do. But I thought you had really good analysis, which I thought was really cool, on why the violence happens because of our society and our culture that's more individualistic. But then you got to your solution, which was like sort of comprehensive, like Head Start programs, more of like a communal environment. But in debate, one of the things that like has to be unique about your alternative proposal is that like it should be competitive with what the affirmative says, which means you can't do both at the same time. So basically Monique can be like, cool, I agree with everything you say, let's do Head Start programs, let's do all that cool stuff, sounds good, but let's also limit gun magazines to 10. And there's no reason why that wouldn't be able to happen. I liked that you, like Jared was saying, you got to, like, I think one of a strong argument at the end about, like, the Second Amendment is to maintain a militia, to fight back against our government if, you know, our government happens to become tyrannical. I don't personally believe that argument is very valuable, but in a debate round, I'm willing to listen to it, and so I give you credit for making that argument. All in all, I think that, like, on her side, she gets, like, some people escape and their lives are saved, and on your side, it's, like, maybe infringing Second Amendment, Like maybe some people will do it anyway, and so I'm like, well, if she can pretty much show how she saves lives, I'm willing to vote for that.
Thank you. That was very comprehensive. We're a little short on time, so we need a one sentence how you voted and why, please.
My name is Anne. I felt like both.
Hi, Anne.
Thank you. I felt like both speakers did a really great job. I voted for the affirmative though because I felt that her reputation was really clear to follow, and that ultimately led me to my decision.
Hi, my name is Moses. I voted for the negative because even though Alternator provided a lot of good data and statistical supporting, I thought she could have done a better job in delivering the speech, like the tone, your posture, gestures, how you engage the audience. So overall, I think the substance-wise, they were pretty close to each other. But then because he was better in delivering his speech, I voted for the negative stance.
Thank you. Yes, please.
I'm Young. I voted for the affirmative. I really liked Josh's energy, but I just felt like his solution was a little too general and broad and kind of impractical. And as for Monique, I really like that she explained how her solution will help make mass shooting less lethal. So yeah.
Yes, please.
My name is Thelma, and I voted
Hi,
for
Thelma.
the opposition because although she made really good points and supported them well, I like that he brought in different, like what could happen in the future. So it wasn't just one argument, but it brought in several different aspects and how it would affect future policies.
Hi, my name is Laura, and
Hi,
I
Laura.
voted on the affirmative as well because she just had a lot of facts to back what she was saying up, and I really liked that. Also, I was kind of thrown off by the Second Amendment comment that you made because it's not only like bearing arms, it also says that we should bear arms in case of like there being a threat, and I think it had nothing to do with what they were saying. So.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Alberto.
Hi, Alberto.
I voted affirmative. I liked how she quantified the lives at stake. It touched real quick to home, and was able to identify with it. What I also liked about Josh's approach was a long-term approach. The only reason why I didn't vote on the opposition side is that he didn't back it up with more statistical analysis or brush up on
Support, yeah. Okay, yes, please.
Hi, I'm Megan.
Hi, Megan.
I thought that you both did a really great job of being very thorough and providing a lot of evidence and facts, but I did vote for
Laura.
the opposition because I felt that you really touched more on the core of the issue, which is the economic situation people are in that drive them to act more violently, so I agreed with that.
Yeah, it was an interesting point, wasn't it? Yes, John.
Hi, my name is John.
Hi, John.
I voted for the affirmative and Monique because I felt like her points were just pretty clear, simple and concise, and just really got to the issue. I do want to commend Josh, though, because if memory serves correctly, I think you did actually switch to this topic to accommodate. So right away you had an uphill battle, so I definitely commend you on all of the points and arguments you made.
Thank you. Yes, please. Next.
Oh, yeah. Hi, my name is Sam.
Hi, Sam.
I voted for the affirmative. I think they both had good points to make. The negative that I had for the affirmative was I think the beginning section of it, maybe the first minute, was kind of broadly on guns themselves and less about the magazines. I would have wished that it had gotten to the point sooner.
Earlier,
Yeah. The reason that I gave Josh a few things was because I think the structure was important. I mean, she had a lot of clear structure even in her argument. The structure was kind of all over the place, which is a little snippy.
Good. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Corey. I voted in the affirmative.
Hi, Corey.
I like both arguments. I like that Monique's solution was clear and practical. I felt it could be achieved relatively easy.
Thank you. Okay, can you see me after class for a second, please? Okay, good. Go.
My name is Sam. I voted in the affirmative. I thought Josh's presentation was great. I just thought Monique's was better structured and well researched, and it was well presented.
My name is Anthony, and I voted for the affirmative because I thought her solution was more practical, but overall, they both had really good arguments that were very concise.
Back row quickly.
My name is Obed. I voted in the negative just because I wasn't really convinced that